I mean, I'm going to get this party started. And I want to speak about a really interesting, I wouldn't necessarily call it a story because it's a series of tweets that have come from a very credible journalist, Nick Harris, regarding the situation with Manchester City. And he starts his thread off yesterday by simply stating that lots of commentary has passed in the last 36 hours since the PSR rules against Everton and Newcastle, Nottingham Forest have appeared. And he goes on to speak about the differences between the two cases. But he rattles off a series in these emails, which we can see here, that simply state that City have spent millions in this process trying to stall the process as much as they can. He says that Man City supposedly have a mountain of irrefutable evidence of their innocence, and they say it's ready to go, yet they don't say bring it on and let's get this sorted for everybody's benefit. He says they could have cooperated for almost six years ago when the Premier League first started investigating them, and they didn't. That is their prerogative. It's not great for optics, but they don't care about optics. It goes on to state that some City fans go to extremes to convince themselves there's no case against City, despite having been fined 90 million euros, later reduced to 30 million euros, for major breaches in financial rules and dishonesty and non-cooperation before the 115 charges. He says, I've reported on City my whole life. I knew and know people inside the club at all levels. I've been to Khaldoon's guest in his director's suite, albeit before I called them out. I have multiple sources who have told me what really happened. Manchester City's hierarchy realized around 2010 that they needed accelerated investment before UEFA's FFP came into force. Their solution was cooking the books. That was evident from their 2014 punishment onward. It's all in plain sight. And then more chillingly, I suppose, than this, he continues and he reveals an email. He reveals an email that everybody can see here. That it was written by a gentleman called Simon Cliff, who was City Football Group's General Counsel. This was written in April 2014 to a leadership group internally. And he was asked to respond about an inquiry about Brahim Diaz, who was then 14 and potentially having moved illegally to Manchester City. And in this email, he essentially says that they've done this before. They have to move carefully. There's a way in which they can do this if they're able to find work for his parents that are non-related. But he goes on to say, what does the journalist know about Brahim in here? Does he know the journalist is here when he shouldn't be? We have had him train on training forms, which we are allowed to do. But as we have discussed before, we need to decide what to do with him longer term until he is 16. Having him at our academy permanently until then is a big risk in my view. Also, when he is 16, he can join. So he can only join at 16 if his parents have non-football reasons. This is the scariest bit. He says, we have done this successfully before, but again, we must be careful on how this is executed. And he goes on in his thread to say, notable that Simon Cliff notes the kid can only join at 16. He was 14 when the email was written. If his parents moved to Manchester for non-footballing reasons. But guess what? He and his family were already in Manchester by February 2014, arranged by Manchester City. So he is coming out here and claiming, although this email was written, he was in the academy illegally at 14 years of age when he should not have been. And these are more leaks that have come out, more leaked official emails from Manchester City that prove of huge wrongdoing at the football club. Well, the journalist states that it proves wrongdoing. This journalist has also gone on to say that he's got far more of this, more stories are going to follow, and this is just essentially, and I'm paraphrasing this, but the tip of the iceberg to what's been going on at Manchester City. What's your reaction to this?
You know, Terry, the reason why when I speak on Manchester City, I really irritate Manchester City fans and the rest of the Premier League fans agree with me. Spurs fans, Arsenal fans, Chelsea fans, Liverpool fans, United fans, whoever it is listening, 90%, 99% of them agree with me, because I only say what's on everyone's mind. Everyone in the chat, like, I represent their opinion on Manchester City because they all know the truth. We all know. We all know deep down, you're all sat back. If you were to judge this, everything Terry just showed you on the screen, and if you were to judge this whole City situation, you all know Man City cheated their way to the top. There is no need for us to sit up here and create this false narrative in everyone's mind. We like, deep down, if you were just judging this and it's not like public opinion or anything, you know that City were guilty. And this right here is an example, and I've given multiple common sense, logical examples based on whether it be sponsorships, whether it be based on multiple different things. And that's why City fans go on this vehement defense, as he even mentioned in his tweets, where they have convinced themselves that City really are innocent, where they've convinced themselves that Manchester City are the only club in world football to make money during COVID, where they've convinced themselves that they've done everything the right way. We all know Manchester City does not make nowhere near as much money if it wasn't for sponsorships, that are kind of owned by the same people that own Manchester City. And I think stuff like this, like with the Brahim Diaz situation, I think the statement that you put at the end, where it's like, they say essentially, we have done this before, but we have to be careful how it's executed, shows that this is something that's been done multiple times as well. So it's not like the first time ever it happened. And the start, and the series of tweets at the start as well, the 6 tweets at the start. I think now, because Manchester City haven't been cooperative, and I think because Manchester City haven't, like, just kind of, and by the way, he mentions it in his tweets, since you have mountains and mountains and mountains of irrefutable evidence to show your innocence, why don't you just show us the mountains and mountains and mountains of evidence that show that you're innocent? This is the stuff that I just don't understand. If Terry says, Husam, you punched Igal at 13:05 p.m. today, and we're gonna put you in prison, I'm gonna go like, no, 13:05, I was in the mosque, and here's the picture because it was the Friday prayer. Done. Like, and I'm innocent now. There is no need for us to have this whole, show about it and do all this stuff. But the thing is, with Manchester City, we all know, factually speaking, that something has happened. Something has happened, whether it be at the start before FFP or even post the FFP thing happened. And it's just these small things that when you connect the dots together. Listen, I'm not no Sherlock Holmes. I'm not no Conan, the guy who does this and then he just starts analyzing what happened. I'm not any of that. Like, I'm just a football fan who looks at common sense and logic and facts, and I just speak on this situation. And I look at as an example, the sponsorship groups, and I look at them making money during COVID. I make at their revenues being extremely big for a club that essentially started at 12 years ago. You look at emails like this. And by the way, Terry knows this. This is not the first emails that have been released to the public. There have been multiple emails released to the public. So this is just compiling on and on and on and on and on. And I will relate this to this Forest and Everton thing quickly. I think what the Premier League is doing right now, I actually give them credit. I actually think it's a little bit smart. I tell you why. They're essentially charging Forest, they're charging Everton, they're charging all these small clubs, because now they're just they're hunting slowly every single fish. Like, they caught the tuna, and then they caught the dolphin, and then they caught this, and they caught that, and now big up to you, Fad. And then they want to catch now the big shark. Don't they call themselves the shark? So you've caught all the fish in the ocean, and now there's this one guy that still I have to catch. And essentially, the court of public opinion now, and football fans in general, and Premier League fans in general, will have this idea in their head. Wait, so Everton were deducted 10 points, Forest had this ban, etc., etc., etc. So now, if City get charged, you're gonna have to do like times 100 of whatever you've done. So this is the thing. I feel like they're doing this on purpose, just to go harder and harder on Manchester City. And I hope they are charged, and I hope they are stripped of their titles. And people always say, and I'm sorry, I'm going to rant on just here quickly. City fans will always say shit like, oh, so what are the small clubs meant to do? What are the small clubs meant to do? How come the small clubs ever win? How come the small clubs ever do this? How come the small... Blah, blah, blah. Leicester City won the English Premier League. And then under Brendan Rodgers, made a series of smart signings. finishing fifth and fifth, even though they easily could have finished fourth. So that was like something they could have done. They could have become a Champions League club consistently. They could have made their way to the mountaintop. Brighton is a perfect example. Many clubs in this league. West Ham is a perfect example. Selling Declan Rice, buying a Kudus, buying players like that, winning the Conference League, now in sixth place, looking to win the Europa League, looking to win trophies. You can build your way from the bottom till the top quickly. You can do that. You can and step by step you can get to the mountaintop. From a YouTube perspective, when I first started, I had to build my way up till 25,000 subscribers on my channel. Some people now it's a bit easier, maybe a couple of guys get redirects, shit like that. People find who you are. So you can get to the top still, and you can get to the top in an easier way. I recognize that. And by the way, the TV deals that are going to come to the Premier League, there is no excuse for any Premier League to not compete. Like TV deals, I think in the next 2 years, I think it was about to be 300, 400 million, something like that. So a club like Brighton 100% have a chance of winning the league. 100% Brighton in 3-4 years time, they can build the league. If they can win the league, if they start building properly. That's it.
I think there's a few things to sort of break down here. Of course, they deserve their day in court. They deserve their trial or their hearing, whichever phrase people want to use. And if they're proven to be innocent, then I'm someone that will stand there and say they're innocent. The problem is when I read a thread like this. Now, Nick Harris has got to be able to, at some stage, cite his sources. Now, he's never going to reveal his sources to the world. In fact, his final tweet on the thread was, if you're a former Manchester City or CFG, I think City Football Group employee who wants to add to this growing band of disillusioned folk who want to share stories of what really happened since 2010, get in touch. Will be 100% protected as a source. But there could be a point. Let's say, for instance, Manchester City Football Group sued him to say Diaz wasn't at the club in February 2014. You're a liar. And they could do that, by the way. They've got the legal power to sue whoever they want. They've got more money than God. They'd never run out of cash. The fact that they're not suing these journalists is telling. The fact that as much as I know journalists can kind of run along with crazy stories like Varane's gone skiing when he shouldn't. But this type of thing is very different. This is a very serious allegation that he has tweeted out, that they have illegally trafficked a minor into their football club, and alluded to the fact they may have done this multiple times. So I just don't see a journalist like Nick Harris lying with no credible source about this situation and risking not just his job, but everything, his livelihood, his money. They could sue him for every penny he's got. They could take his home away, and it's a drop in the ocean to the Manchester City group, but they could ruin his life. So he isn't going to make, through releasing the story, more money than his house is worth through releasing the story. So there's no mileage in him lying. He believes he has a solid source that would back him up in any eventuality regarding these situations. And that's point one. The second point I would kind of go into is a lot of people are saying that, well, this is different from potentially financially doping. My question is it? And I say, is it? Because Manchester City, and we have rightfully praised them in recent years for how much money they have raised through the sale of their academy players. We have all sat there and gone, look how much money they have raised for the sale of their academy players. And I'm going to search this now because we're live, and I didn't think about this before we went live. But I'm going to look at it now, and I just want to find the Diaz sale. It must be somewhere, how much they sold him for. I'm just scrolling, looking for it now. I don't even know when he was sold from the football club, but I'll probably find it at some point. I don't even know where it was that he went to. Who went? He went to Real Madrid, 17 million, according to transfer.co.uk. So the point is, let's just say they bought him in at 14 when they were not allowed to, from, I think it was Malaga that he was at. And they sold him for 17 million. That's 17 million of pure profit under FFP and profit and sustainability because he's an academy player. But if they've brought him in illegally at the age of 14, they may not have been able to get him at 16 because by then he may have agreed to go somewhere else. How many other young players? I mean, and I'm looking at the numbers here. They sold, I don't even know who this guy is. In the same year, they sold Angus Gunn for 11 million, Jason Derona for 10 million. A year later, academy players here, Douglas Luiz got sold for 16 million. They sold Manu Garcia for 4 million. The next year they didn't really sell anybody. There's a number of players here. I mean, they sold Jack Harrison for 12 million. They sold Lucas Miencha to Wolfsburg for 8 million. That's just in a couple of years surrounding that. If it's marginally provable that one player was brought in and the email states have done this before, surely an investigation has to happen into every single academy player they have signed. They have got to thoroughly investigate when they came in, how they signed them, what they did to get them, or what age were they in. Because they're now making hundreds of millions of pounds through the sale of these brilliant players they're developing. But how are they signing them? Are they going to these families and saying, look, he's not meant to join until he's 16, but we'll bring him in now at 14. We've got this way of doing it. We'll get you some jobs in Manchester so you can be here. He won't officially be on our books until he's 16, but he really will be. We'll just stick him in the academy at this club or that club over there or in this country until he's a certain age. Then we bring him in. If they're cheating the system that way to raise the money they're now making to keep spending, that has to be investigated. Now, the third claim that people throw back in is, I don't think they're the only club that's doing it. Fair enough. That is in my opinion, that is a reasonable claim to make. But show me some form of evidence that other clubs are doing this. I'm not saying they're not, but where are the leaked emails from Arsenal, from Liverpool, from Chelsea, from Manchester United, from Tottenham to show they're doing this? Why is it City? Now, you can argue it's an agenda, but it does appear, according to this journalist, that it's Man City employees that are leaking this. This isn't they're not being hacked by Liverpool fans who are then hacking the email server and finding this. It's Man City's own employees that are leaking this to the media. Maybe so. For me, I would agree. I don't think they're the only club who's doing this, but they're the only club where it's leaking out and the information is coming out. So you can't defend City's potential actions but other clubs might be doing it as well. Can you imagine being in a police station? We're arresting
Didn't Chelsea get kind of charged for a similar reason with the similar
thing that they've been done? Exactly. And it's crazy for me. It is absolutely crazy to me. Even if every club is doing it, that's not a defense of Man City. We're looking at that because that's what's come out. I can't ignore this. And someone actually said in the comments here, they said, Terry, it made me laugh. It says, Terry, why'd you bring this up first? I think you have an agenda. It's not my fault that this information has come to light. Football fans should talk about it. And although I want to talk about football,
I'm sure Terry DM'd the journalists to put out those tweets, right?
Instead of football, rivals are talking about charges and spending. No, we're not talking about spending. We're talking about, have Man City, over the past 10 or so years, raised the money to build this amazing squad and construct one of the greatest football teams ever known to man? Have they cheated the system? Have they broke it? Listen, have they illegally brought in underage players to fund this situation? Have they done that? If they have, it needs to be looked at because the football they've produced has been absolutely spellbinding. But it's fake. It's fugazi. It's not real if it was built upon a sham. And as football people, we should want the truth. I want the truth for Man City fans. If they end up having this taken away from the Man City fans, if everything they think is real gets taken away, genuinely, I'll feel for them. How disgusting would it be for their club to cheat them as well? How disgusting would it be for Pep Guardiola to have had a squad built for him through ill-gotten gains? This is important for football at every single level to know the truth. Equally, it has to be discussed because if Man City are innocent and these journalists and these whistleblowers are making up lies about them, they need to be outed and stopped as well, because one day it could be your club. But you don't resolve these situations by having no discourse about them and not discussing them in public. And for me, I'm generally a believer in there's no smoke without fire, with the volume of evidence that's been put out there so far. But if you believe they're innocent, then I respect your opinion. But this needs to be, as a football fan,
you're wrong.
I think this needs to be answered personally. I really, really do, because this is